And momentarily, we'll have it live here. The Senate live now debating reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. Shortly, they'll consider 2 judicial nominations. You can see the Senate on C-SPAN 2. And right now, C-SPAN 3 live as the Senate Agriculture Committee debates and marks up the Farm Bill, seeking savings of $26 billion over 10 years. That session could last most of the day, and you can see all of it on C-SPAN 3. And now live to the floor of the U.S. House.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Eternal God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. Lead us this day in your ways, that our nation might be guided along the roads of peace, justice, and goodwill. Grant strength and wisdom to our Speaker and the members of both the People's House and the Senate, to our President and his Cabinet, and to our Supreme Court. Bless as well the moral and military leaders of our country, and may those who are the captains of business, industry, and unions learn to work together toward the mutual benefit of all, walking in the ways of righteousness and working for the highest good of our beloved land. Grant us the courage to develop a sound energy program for the good of all, and may our people respond with willing hearts to make that program work. Bless us this day and every day, and may all that is done within the People's House be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Higgins. The Chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Consent to address the House 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, in 2002, Yucca Mountain was approved as the location for our nation's nuclear repository, which was previously authorized by Congress in 1987. In 2010, the President sadly placed party politics over the interests of the American people and began the wasteful process of stopping the project. Consumers in South Carolina have paid over $1.3 billion for the establishment of a national nuclear repository at Yucca Mountain. In order to establish accountability and protect the people living in the 2nd Congressional District of South Carolina, I have introduced the Yucca Utilization to Control Contamination Act. This bill gives the administration 2 options. First, certify the Yucca Mountain project, or second, face fines to reimburse consumers across the nation who have paid for its opening. The President constantly talks about fairness. It is only fair that the people of South Carolina receive the services they've already paid for hard-working taxpayer dollars, promoting jobs. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we'll never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Patients deserve choice when selecting the right prescription and pharmacy for them. But powerful unregulated middlemen, known as pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, are limiting their options, and most people don't even know it. These companies are telling doctors what drugs they can prescribe, limiting access to pharmacy patient care, and telling customers what pharmacies they can go to. That's not fair to patients. With the pending merger of 2 of the biggest PBMs, one company will control 3/4 of the private insurance market. This leaves us with even less competition, higher prices, and fewer choices. That's why I support the Medicare Pharmacy Transparency and Audit Act. This bill will ensure that PBMs are transparent and fair when dealing with local pharmacies, and it will help make sure the Medicare Part D prescription program works for seniors. And it will be an important step to protect pharmacy choice for patients.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, last week, liberal MSNBC host Ed Schultz found himself agreeing with the Heritage Foundation and Mitt Romney. What issue could possibly unite a liberal and conservatives? The answer is sugar reform. You see, sugar farmers and sugar processors benefit from a federal sugar program that fixes prices and guarantees their profits. Indeed, Schultz noted that one of the biggest processors, American Crystal Sugar, makes $1.5 billion in revenue and pays its CEO $2.4 million a year in compensation. Now, while Schultz is probably mostly concerned about a labor dispute between American Crystal and its workers, I hope he will also consider the many other workers in sugar-using industries. The federal program inflates the price of sugar in the U.S., placing American sugar users at a severe disadvantage to their foreign competition. In the last 15 years, more than 100,000 workers in sugar-using industries have lost their jobs. I've been proud to work with Congressman Danny Davis to reform this program and make it fair for everyone. Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives agree that the government shouldn't be guaranteeing corporate profits at the expense of workers and consumers. I hope the Ag Committee will reform the sugar program as we deal with the Farm Bill. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Illinois rise? Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today about a serious issue, horse slaughter. A recent poll confirms what many of us already know. 80% of American voters are opposed to slaughtering horses for human consumption. Americans oppose this awful practice regardless of gender, political affiliation, or whether they live in urban or rural areas. The last U.S. horse slaughterhouses were closed in 2007. But despite public opposition, Congress recently restarted horse meat inspections, paving the way for slaughterhouses to reopen. That's why we need to pass the American Horse Slaughter Prevention Act, which would prohibit the sale and transport of horses for slaughter in the United States, as well as transporting them across the border to Canada and Mexico. The passage of this critical bipartisan bill would save the lives of approximately 100,000 American horses exported for slaughter each year. Horses have a special place in our nation's history and folklore, and they are not raised for food. This bill would make sure that these majestic creatures are treated with the respect and dignity they deserve. It should be passed now. I yield back.
The lady yields back. What purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise? Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor an outstanding young man from my district who I've recently had the pleasure of getting to know. Lance Corporal Cody Evans of Speedwell, Tennessee, serves in the United States Marine Corps as a combat engineer, one of the most dangerous jobs in the military. While serving in Afghanistan, Lance Corporal Evans stepped on a pressure plate while sweeping for IEDs, nearly losing his life. He lost both legs and suffered numerous other injuries. I met Lance Corporal Evans in January of this year in a visit to Walter Reed. To say that I was impressed by this young man's spirit and resilience would be an understatement. Cody has the spirit of a fighter, a spirit that has led to his continued recovery. No mention of Cody would be complete without mentioning his mother, Regina, who has been with him constantly. Her dedication to her son is incredible. As a nation, we must recognize those who serve, who have the character and commitment to the risk their lives so that we may sleep peacefully at home. Cody Evans deserves this recognition, which is why it is my honor to ask that this poem, penned by Albert Caswell, be placed into the congressional record. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise? Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
I also ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and spend their remarks on the topic of the amendment by 1 minute.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, today is Israel's Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut, and I recognize our great allies' many achievements over the past 64 years. Israel has endured against all odds, against border attacks, against deniers of her right to exist, against international bias, and even in the face of the threats posed by Iran's nuclear ambitions, Israel valiantly strides forward. Israel is a world hub for biotechnology, for medical research, green energy and innovation, and she is also a welcoming home to those seeking freedom and equal rights as the region's only true democracy. So as we celebrate Israel's Independence Day, let's remember why our bonds run so deep. It's more than strategic cooperation or shared security. It's the values that Americans and Israelis share for democracy and freedom, for basic human dignity. That's what forms the bond, and it's a bond that I will always work to protect and support. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, a few months ago I had the opportunity to visit the Children's Advocacy Center in my hometown of Rock Island, Illinois. The work that they do there to help children and their families that are victims of crimes is truly amazing, and I am grateful for their commitment to the helping of the children that need it the most. April is recognized as a National Child Abuse Prevention Month. Unfortunately, sexual abuse of children is still a serious problem in our country, and too many cases go unreported. My colleague from California and I have introduced H.R. 3486, the Speak Out to Stop Child Abuse Act, which would require states that receive federal funding under the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act to have a law on the books that makes it a criminal penalty for any adult knowingly that fails to report the sexual abuse of a child. H.R. 3486 simply asks states to help by requiring adults who witness the sexual abuse of a child to report it. I want to thank Congresswoman Bass for introducing this legislation, and I also recommend that all of my colleagues help support this also. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. What purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Without objection, gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize April as National Child Abuse Prevention Month. During this month, it is important that we acknowledge the role that we all play in promoting the social and emotional well-being of children in our communities. Unfortunately, throughout this congressional term, we've been astonished by a few high-profile child sex abuse cases. And in some situations, the abuse was unreported for years, leaving dozens of youth vulnerable to further maltreatment for decades. This is unacceptable. Adults should never turn a blind eye after seeing sexual abuse firsthand. Sadly, failing to report child sexual abuse is not new. In 1999, Sharice Iverson, a 7-year-old girl from Los Angeles, was attacked in a restroom. A witness didn't stop the attack or even call for help. She was ultimately murdered. Fortunately, California enacted a law in her name to help ensure this never happens again. At the end of 2011, Representative Bobby Shilley and I introduced a similar bill here in Congress. The bipartisan Speak Out to Stop Child Abuse Act requires all adult witnesses to report child sexual abuse to law enforcement or child protective services. I ask my colleagues to co-sponsor this bipartisan bill.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the EPA is out to get you and crucify you. That's the message from one of President Obama's EPA appointees to our country's oil and natural gas companies. Yesterday, we learned that an official at the Environmental Protection Agency, based in Dallas, used the Roman Empire to illustrate the kind of philosophy that he's followed at the EPA. Here's what he said, and I quote, "The Romans used to conquer little villages in the Mediterranean. They'd go into a little Turkish town somewhere, they'd find the first 5 guys they saw, and they would crucify them. And then, you know, that town was really easy to manage for the next few years." And that's exactly what he did as an EPA official, going after a company that was safely using hydraulic fracturing to drill for gas. He led the charge to crucify this company with no proof that the company had done anything wrong in a case that was finally dismissed last month by a federal court. This is enviro-fascism at its worst. And if someone needs to be made an example of, it's this EPA official who disregarded science and facts to rapidly and negligently pursue the Obama administration's war on energy. And I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to discuss issues affecting veterans throughout California, particularly the VA disability claims backlog and inaccuracy rates at the Oakland Regional Office. A Vietnam veteran from my district, like many others across the country, is suffering from stage 4 lung cancer caused by exposure to Agent Orange. He made great sacrifices to defend our country, but waited for more than a year for the Oakland office to process his claim. My office was able to help him, but such delays are unacceptable. Unfortunately, long waits for benefits have become the norm for veterans in Northern California. With more and more veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, it is imperative that the VA take action now to address the backlog in Oakland. While I welcome the news that the entire staff at the facility will be retrained, much more is needed. I call on the VA to implement a concrete plan to address the inaccuracies and delays at the Oakland office. Our region's and nation's veterans deserve no less. I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to discuss an important issue to young America. That's access to affordable higher education. Young Americans today are graduating college with a degree, but also with $25,000, $50,000, and $100,000 in student loan debt. 37 million people have outstanding student loan debt, totaling over $1 trillion. 2/3 of the debt held by Americans under the age of 30 is student loan debt. In 2007, a Democratic Congress cut the interest rate on student loans in half to 3.4%, but it is set to expire this summer, and allowing the interest rate to double would constitute a tax hike on students in Middle America. In my Western New York district alone, this rate increase would affect 62,000 students and their families. I urge my colleagues to take immediate action on this issue because all Americans deserve a fair shot at a good education. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise?
House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, the House Republicans want to play politics on the issue of doubling student loans. They say, well, you know, the reduction in student loan interest rates was never supposed to be permanent. Well, you know, guess what? The Bush tax cuts, which I voted against, for millionaires and billionaires were never supposed to be permanent either. But you're fighting to preserve them every step of the way. We could do one simple thing here. If we raised the tax rate on income over $350,000 only from 35 to 36%, we could give millions of students a more affordable education with lower interest rates. Those who have already made it would share a little bit of burden to help those who want to be the next generation of business leaders and political leaders and scientists for our country. So come on, guys, like, you know, the millionaires and billionaires, they can take care of themselves. That wasn't supposed to be permanent, but let's help the students.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
I seek to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, a century ago, Juliet Gordon Low assembled 18 girls from Georgia for the first Girl Scout meeting. From Daisy Low's start, 50 million people have been counted among the ranks of the Girl Scouts of the USA, and today there's a membership of more than 3 million. And today Girl Scouts are involved in much more than cookies. I've had the privilege to see their wonderful community service projects, have attended awards ceremonies, and I know about their work to introduce girls of all ages to math and science. Recently, I had the opportunity to spend time with members of the Girl Scouts from West Windsor and Plainsboro, New Jersey. Their robotics team placed first in the Eastern Pennsylvania division of the first LEGO League, and they're competing in the World Festival in St. Louis this week. I send them my best wishes. I'm inspired by the Girl Scouts, and I rise to honor all the work that the Girl Scouts have done over 100 years, and I wish them success for the next 100 years.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In a global economy, putting a college education within reach for every American has never been more important. But it's also never been more expensive. Our nation's young people have been hit particularly hard during the economic downturn over the last several years. In Texas and all across the country, students and recent college graduates are now facing the highest unemployment rate of any other group. 2/3 of the class of 2010 graduated with an average of $25,000 of student loan debt. Young Americans are rightly concerned about their future, and so am I. On July the 1st of this year, Stafford loan interest rates are set to double unless Congress takes action. Mr. Speaker, as we sit here as a Congress, need to work together to prevent this increase. I, along with my Democratic colleagues in Congress and President Obama, have been working for a number of efforts to make college more affordable.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
The House for 1 minute, revise and extend, et cetera, et cetera.
Without objection, the gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Best thing members of Congress can do to represent their constituents well is to stay in touch. Today we had another teletown hall in my district, and we listened to seniors be concerned about Social Security and Medicare. They wondered why the Ryan budget takes away from them, and why, when Social Security and Medicare are good for so many years to come and not the cause of the deficit, that their futures, health care expenses and their daily expenses are being threatened. Well, those are good questions, and I let them know that the Democrats in this Congress and in the Senate aren't going to allow that to be jeopardized. We're going to maintain Social Security and Medicare as we know it. It's so important. And for the young people, and I see one up there, the young people, Mr. Speaker, need to see that student loan rates stay at 3.4%, and not the way the Republicans are going to do it and pay for it by taking away cervical cancer screenings and mammograms for women. That's wrong. We need to protect our future, the future generations, and be statesmen and not worry about tomorrow's election. Thank you, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
1 minute. Permission to revise.
Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today for the observance of the National Day of Prayer, which will take place next Thursday, May 3rd. This tradition, begun under President Eisenhower and continued through peacetime and wartime, through times of prosperity and times of uncertainty, demonstrates our commitment as a nation to maintaining a foundation of prayer. Through prayer, we acknowledge that God gives us peace in the midst of our circumstances, and we seek the wisdom to know and act upon God's purpose for our lives, and we feel the power of God to protect and provide for those of us who call on His name. For we know that the true source of power cannot be found here in the halls of Congress, or in the Oval Office in the West Wing, or in the chambers of the Supreme Court, but only on our knees before the one who is the true source of power. So may we pray not only next Thursday on the National Day of Prayer and join communities across this nation which are joining in prayer for our country, but may we do so also in honor and in recognition of our national motto, "In God We Trust." Indeed, may God bless this great nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Without objection, gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, we must hold the government accountable for the safekeeping of the sensitive information that we choose to share with it. In response to a number of privacy concerns I have with the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act, I sought to encourage more government accountability by co-sponsoring a bipartisan amendment with Congressman Woodall that was offered to the Rules Committee yesterday addressing some of these concerns. Under the current bill, the threshold for having a cause of action against the government for disclosing personal information is exceptionally hard to meet. Our amendment would have lowered this threshold, ensuring that the government treats highly sensitive and personal information it receives with the utmost care. While this amendment was a great example of Democrats and Republicans coming together on an issue that all Americans care about deeply, unfortunately, the Rules Committee chose not to move it forward. While I believe it is important to protect our country against impending cyber attacks, it must be done in a manner that fully respects Americans' constitutional rights. I yield back.
The lady yields back. Who seeks recognition? For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee of Rules, I call up House Resolution 631 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 127, House Resolution 631. Resolved that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 3523 to provide for the sharing of certain cyber threat intelligence and cyber threat information between the intelligence community and cybersecurity entities and for other purposes. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. In lieu of the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence now printed in the bill, it shall be in order to consider as an original bill for the purpose of amendment under the 5-minute rule, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 112-20. That amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read. All points of order against that amendment in the nature of a substitute are waived. No amendment to that amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be in order except those printed in the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the committee of the whole. All points of order against such amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill to the House with such amendments as may have been adopted. Any member may demand a separate vote in the House on any amendment adopted in the committee of the whole to the bill or to the amendment in the nature of a substitute made in order as original text. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and amendments thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
Gentleman from Florida.
Section 2. It shall be in order at any time through the legislative day of April 27, 2012, for the Speaker to entertain motions that the House suspend the rules as though under Clause 1 of Rule 15 relating to the following measures. A. The bill, H.R. 2096, to advance cybersecurity research, development, and technical standards and for other purposes. B. The bill, H.R. 3834, to amend the High Performance Computing Act of 1991 to authorize activities for support of networking and information technology research and for other purposes. C. The bill, H.R. 4257, to amend Chapter 35 of Title 44 United States Code to revise requirements relating to federal information security and for other purposes. Section 3. Upon the adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill H.R. 4628 to extend student loan interest rates for undergraduate federal direct Stafford loans. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and any amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Education and the Workforce, and 2. 1 motion to recommit. Section 4. The Committee on Appropriations may, at any time before 6 p.m. on Wednesday, May 2, 2012, file privileged reports to accompany measures making appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2013.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, for the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis, pending which I yield myself as much time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule, House Resolution 631. The rule provides for consideration of multiple pieces of legislation meant to provide solutions to some of today's most pressing threats and concerns. Resolution 631 ensures that we'll be able to have a robust debate on important issues facing our nation's cybersecurity infrastructure while also providing a path forward for student loan legislation that reflects quick action we need to take on this pressing issue. First, House Resolution 631 gives the House the opportunity to be a leader when it comes to our nation's cybersecurity needs. The rule also sets up the opportunity for us to vote tomorrow on a measure that addresses our nation's student loan programs. Without this legislation, Americans with federal student loans will see their rates double starting July. These are issues that cannot wait. Our nation's security cannot wait. In a time when our workforce is so bleak and President Obama's policies keep digging us deeper and deeper into the financial hole, we cannot wait on finding a solution for those young people with student loan debt who are still trying to find a place in our workforce. We all know that the Internet has been fundamentally changed in the way we live our lives day to day. I think it's safe to say that even 20 years ago, many of us in this room couldn't have imagined that one day we'd live in a world where we could do almost anything we wanted, be it buy groceries, run a business, talk to a loved one serving our country overseas, through a computer. The Internet has made all this possible. But for all the ways the Internet has made life, business, and even government to some extent faster, more responsive, and more transparent, it's also opened us up to new threats. U.S. companies report an onslaught of cyber intrusions that steal sensitive information. Even our own government has suffered from cyber attacks. This type of rampant Internet theft not only cost American companies valuable information, intellectual property, and research and development work. It also cost American workers their jobs. It's hard to say exactly how much cyber attacks cost our nation's economy, but it would cost as much as $400 billion a year, according to one report from Computer Security Institute and the FBI. Today in the House, we'll begin consideration of a bill that will help protect our nation from these kinds of threats. H.R. 3523, the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act, would allow private companies to voluntarily share information with each other, with the government, in a sort of public-private Internet partnership. The bill includes significant safeguards to protect personal and private information. It significantly limits the federal government's use of that information that the private companies voluntarily provide, including the government's ability to search data. It requires an independent inspector general for the intelligence community audit this information shared with the government and report the results to Congress on a regular oversight. It also encourages private sector to make the information it shares with others, including the government, as anonymous as possible. This is a strongly bipartisan piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, that had passed out of the Intelligence Committee with an overwhelming vote of 17-1. In the Rules Committee yesterday, we heard testimony from both sides, speaking to cooperative, bipartisan work that was done in this piece of legislation. I commend the work of the Intelligence Committee did with the members on both sides of the aisle, as well as private sector companies, trade groups, privacy and civil liberty advocates, and the executive branch. It's because of these efforts that virtually every sector of the economy supports this legislation. It's also why there are more than 100 co-sponsors of this legislation, including 11 committee chairmen. But recognizing that we don't always face one problem at a time, this rule also provides for consideration of a measure to address student loans. Our legislation, the Interest Rate Reduction Act, would prevent federally subsidized student loan interest rates on new loan disbursements from doubling to 6.8% from the current 3.4% on July 1st of this year. This one-year measure would cost the government $5.9 billion. Now, you all probably heard me talk again and again about bringing our nation back to its core mission. And you've also heard me talk about how we need to cut back on the nice-to-haves to make hard choices that we will and won't pay for. Back when the previous majority passed their health care takeover in 2010, they paid for it in part by taking $9 billion, Mr. Speaker, from the college financial aid trust funds. Now that they've robbed Peter to pay Paul, they're realizing Peter still needs the money too. To resolve the problem, the Interest Rate Reduction Act pays for the stopgap measure by taking some of that stolen money back from the Obamacare slush fund and redirecting it to student financial aid. Sometimes this House has to multitask, Mr. Speaker. As we face an economy that can't afford to lose any more jobs to cyber attacks and college loan recipients who can't find a job thanks to President Obama's failed policies, this is one of those times. House Res. 631 provides the House with a way forward on both of these critical measures. With that, I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on the rule and yes on the underlying pieces of legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman from Florida for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to the rule and the underlying bills. H.R. 3523, the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act, or CISPA, and H.R. 4628, the Interest Rate Reduction Act. Both bills are being brought to the House under a hyper-partisan closed process that limits debate and discussion that can improve the legislation and allow the House to work its will. Many of the meaningful amendments that would have protected privacy under CISPA were not allowed under this rule, and under the Interest Rate Reduction Act, no amendments were allowed. I want to address both of the bills that are contained in this underlying rule. First, the Interest Rate Reduction Act. This is a bill of rather mysterious origin that appeared in the Rules Committee yesterday, mere hours after having been introduced by its lead sponsor, Ms. Biggert of Illinois. No regular order was followed for this bill. This bill received no hearings and no markups by the Committee of Jurisdiction. And within hours of it being introduced, it was brought immediately to the Rules Committee with direction to go to the floor of the House of Representatives without a single member of either party having any opportunity to amend the bill, and with only 1 hour of debate. What is new about this cliff with regard to student loan rates? This was a well-known fact with regard to the expiration date, that in fact the Stafford student loan interest rate would increase from 3.4 to 6.8%. I've joined my colleague, Mr. Courtney, who will later address these issues, as a sponsor of his bill that would address extending the lower student loan rate. And yet, there has been no interest from the committee chair or Republicans with regard to this issue until yesterday afternoon, when a new bill without the benefit of a markup was presented in committee into the Rules Committee, going completely around the Committee of Jurisdiction. Look, there's a legitimate issue here. Middle-class families are having a tougher and tougher time affording college for their kids, at the same time that a college education is more necessary than ever for young people to have the skills they need to compete in the global economy. It's a serious issue that deserves serious treatment. There's a lot of cost drivers with regard to education. Some have commented about a higher education bubble that has led to higher and higher tuition rates. Certainly how the state and federal share of higher education funding is targeted and the manner in which it's spent absolutely affect tuition rates and whether there's a bubble. But instead of a thoughtful approach, an approach that looked at drivers of costs, an approach that looked at outcomes from higher education, an approach that looked at employment levels pre and post higher education, a bill was immediately created and brought to the floor within a day. Again, there's technically a 3-day rule that the majority has said that they would follow. They would give members of this body of both sides 3 days to consider legislation. But they calculate 3 days in a very funny way. There was, as far as I know, no members of this body who saw this particular student loan bill before yesterday afternoon. Here we are today on the rule with final passage vote without any opportunity to amend, expected to occur midday tomorrow. By most calculations, it sounds like well less than 3 days. They had maybe 6 hours, 7 hours yesterday, 24 today, and maybe 10 tomorrow. It seems like, in fact, less than 48 hours, less than 2 days. But nevertheless, it's yet another example of only governing out of a sense of crisis. And with regard to this issue, one with which we do have time, fundamentally, to follow regular order. And even more importantly, we did have time. This is not an issue that appeared from nowhere. Why has the chair of the Committee of Jurisdiction not been working on this issue for weeks or months? And while many of us on our side, including myself, appreciate the sudden interest in helping middle-class families afford college, it would be good to do so in a more thoughtful manner that truly addresses the cost drivers of education. I also take issue with the other underlying bill, the initial bill that we thought we would be debating under this rule before this other mysterious bill appeared out of nowhere and came to Rules Committee. This was a bill that did follow regular order in the Intelligence Committee, and while a number of amendments that are meaningful are included in this rule, several of the most meaningful amendments that truly would have addressed the privacy concerns with regard to CISPA are not allowed under this rule. CISPA asks Americans to once again to make a false choice between security and liberty. Now, we all agree on both sides of the aisle, Americans in general, that cybersecurity is an important issue that needs to be addressed. That's why it's critical that we get information sharing correct. This bill in its current form before us is an unprecedented, sweeping piece of legislation that would waive every single privacy law ever enacted in the name of cybersecurity. It would even waive the terms of service, supersede the terms of service that most American consumers, American people believe that they're entering a contract with a provider of a website or service of their choice. That information, without any safeguards, would be shared to the government. As a former tech entrepreneur myself, I know very well how important cybersecurity is. Frankly, it's something that I've never thought we could rely on the government to do for us, and I think a lot of tech companies feel the same way. But that doesn't mean that in the effort for expediency we should give up our privacy rights and liberties to protect online networks. And while I appreciate the efforts the sponsors of the bill have made to move the bill slightly in a direction that people can have more comfort with, they haven't gone nearly far enough to ensure that customers' private information remains that, just private. There's nothing in this bill to stop companies from sharing their private information with every branch of the government, including secret unaccountable branches, including the military. And allowing the military or NSA to spy on American citizens on American soil goes against every principle that this nation stands for. A lot has been made of saying, oh, it's optional. Well, it may be optional for the corporations to share information, but is it optional for their users whose information they have, who entered a specific terms of service, to have that information shared without their consent? In many cases, under a terms of service agreement, the users may in fact be the owners of the information. The company that it's hosted on may in fact merely be a host or provider, but again, outside of any legal process, this gives that company with its hosting or providing the ability to share wholesale information that can include health records, that can include firearm registration information, that can include credit card information, that can include account information, that can include political information, with secret government authorities. Now, we have government authorities that have the responsibility and are charged with keeping America safe on American soil, namely the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI. They've worked hard over decades to strike a fine balance between protecting our liberties and security. The military and the NSA are unaccustomed to that balance. That's why, even within the military, many from DOD have expressed opposition to this bill. Eric Rosenbach, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Cyber Policy within DOD, said that a civilian agency and not an agency within DOD should be responsible for securing the domestic civilian Internet. According to Mr. Rosenbach, quote, "It's almost certainly not the right approach for the United States of America to have a foreign intelligence focus on domestic networks doing something that throughout history has been a domestic function," end quote. So not only will the military and the NSA be able to receive private information if CISPA passes, but they'll be able to use it for almost any justification. Now, while ostensibly a cybersecurity bill, CISPA allows information sharing, quote, "for the protection of national security," end quote. A broad and undefined category that can include practically everything under the sun. Is a Tea Party activist a threat to national security? Is a communist activist a threat to national security? The danger that this can be used for political oppression and to stifle political speech is very real under this bill. In addition, because of the immunity clauses of this bill, there's no incentive at all for companies to withhold their customers' sensitive private information. Companies are exempted from any liability for violating their own terms of service and sharing information with secret government agencies. In fact, given the high compliance costs for this sort of sharing, CISPA actually incentivizes companies to dump all their information on the government so they can take advantage of this blanket immunity that this bill includes. This legislation also has glaring omissions when it comes to the nation's future capacity to be competent at cybersecurity. The bill lacks adequate support and direction for paths that can actually improve the cybersecurity of our nation. Training in the pipeline for cybersecurity experts, including STEM programs in our K-12 schools and computer science, embedding cybersecurity in computer science, and providing scholarships and ways that students can attain the highest levels and enter public service to support the cybersecurity of the nation. Mr. Speaker, there should be an open rule for both of the underlying bills to give members of this House across the ideological spectrum the opportunity to address the deficiencies in both these bills. Now, we've heard from supporters of the cybersecurity bill that privacy concerns are overblown. Trust us, they've said. Republicans say, trust big government bureaucrats, trust anonymous intelligence officers to use that information responsibly. Well, under this bill, we have no choice but to trust them, because the bill imposes no serious limitation on what corporations or secret government agencies can do with our private information. It's outrageous to have a closed rule on the student interest loan bill, a bill that no member of this body, Democrat or Republican, has had any opportunity to amend, and it is also outrageous to not allow a full discussion of the thoughtful amendments brought forth by members of both parties that would remedy some of the very severe deficiencies in the cybersecurity bill. I therefore cannot support this rule or these flawed bills, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Thornberry.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the gentleman from Florida for yielding to me. I rise in support of the rule and the bill, the cyber bill that it brings to the floor, as well as the other cyber bills which the House will consider today and tomorrow. And let me begin, Mr. Speaker, by acknowledging the leadership of the Speaker and Majority Leader for setting up a process for a thoughtful examination of the many issues related to cybersecurity. They recognized that not only is it a significant national security threat, it's a threat to our economy and to jobs, but at the same time, what we are trying to protect is owned and at least 85–90% of it is owned and operated by the private sector. So one has to tread carefully in this area, and we have tried to do so with the limited legislation that is before the House today and tomorrow. I also want to thank the members of the House Cybersecurity Task Force who put in a great deal of time and expertise in sorting through these issues and making recommendations. Mr. Adderholt, Mr. Chaffetz, Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Goodlatte, Mr. Hurt, Mr. Latta, Mr. Lungren, Mr. McCall, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Stivers, and Mr. Terry. Of course, a number of members have worked on these issues for several years, including a number of those I just mentioned, as well as Mr. Langevin, Mr. Ruppersberger, people on both sides of the aisle. Finally, I also want to take a second to thank the staffs of the various committees who have worked on this issue, as well as Josh Martin, Michael Seeds of my office, as well as Jen Stewart, the Speaker's National Security Advisor, whose guidance on substance and process was invaluable. Mr. Speaker, we will have ample opportunity to debate the merits of the individual pieces of legislation. But I think it's important at the beginning just to step back and say, why all this hubbub about computers? What does all that mean? Well, I think we should start with the point that cyber, and that includes networks that are connected to the Internet and networks that are not connected to the Internet, but cyber is deeply ingrained in virtually every facet of our lives now, from the time we get up till the time we go to sleep, and all the times in between. We very much depend on cyber, and anything you very much depend on can and often does become a vulnerability. So we know of at least 3 different kinds of vulnerabilities these days. People can reach through the Internet and steal information, which businesses, large, medium, and small, have produced. It happens every day in this country.
intellectual property is ripped out of the possession of those who produce it, and every time people steal information, they cost us jobs. They are stealing jobs as well. So our economy is directly affected by the difficulty in protecting the information that we as individuals and businesses store on our computers. In addition to that, though, information can be destroyed on our computers, or it can be manipulated, or the computers themselves can be manipulated, so that what we intend to do or what we want to do is not possible. And if, for example, you have a lot of bank records that are destroyed, or other such important records, then it can have a huge effect on our economy as well as our security. But going beyond stealing information, destroying information, we now know it's possible to reach through the Internet and other networks to have physical consequences in the real world, to flip a switch, to open a valve. It's the sort of thing that happened with the Stuxnet virus in Iran. But there are physical consequences to doing so. So that's part of the reason that people talk about the electricity grid going down, a whole city being poisoned by its water supply, chemical plants releasing emissions that it doesn't intend to release. Physical consequences, real death, potentially, and destruction can occur all because of things going on the Internet. That's the reason a lot of people talk about a cyber 9/11 or a cyber Pearl Harbor. I know it's tempting to think all that's hype, but the truth is that over the past decade, and especially over the past couple years, the number and sophistication of threats has grown much more rapidly than our ability to respond. And it's especially our laws and policies that have not kept up with the growing sophistication of threats. So the bills that we have before us this week, 4 of them, try to begin to take a step to close that gap between the growing threat and laws and policies. They don't solve all the problems, they don't try to, but they are a step in the right direction.
I yield the gentleman an additional 1 minute if you need to.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. I would just point out 2 other things briefly. One is, again, the one criticism one hears is that, well, you don't solve this problem or that problem, and that is absolutely true. These bills, all 4 of them, don't solve all the problems in cyberspace. But we shouldn't let the pursuit of the perfect answer prevent us from accomplishing some significant steps in the right direction, and that's what these bills do. The second point I'd make, as the gentleman from Florida mentioned, is 3 of these bills were reported out of committee by voice vote. The information sharing bill was reported out 17-1. And I believe that it has been made better since then. New protections are there, a host of restrictions on how the information can be used, and privacy protections have been added and will be added with the amendments to come. So I think this deserves the support of all members on both sides of the aisle, and members on both sides of the aisle should take credit for taking a step to make our nation more secure. I thank the gentleman for yielding and yield back.
Gentleman from Florida reserves. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honor to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky.
Gentlelady from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I rise today to oppose the rule and the underlying bill despite my genuine concern for cybersecurity. I believe that some positive changes by the chairman and ranking member, it still fails to adequately safeguard the privacy of Americans, and that is why I am the one that voted against it in committee. We absolutely can combat the serious threat by cyber attacks and still ensure that we are protecting not only our computer systems, but also the civil liberties of Americans. As the Obama administration wrote yesterday in opposition to this bill, quote, cybersecurity and privacy are not mutually exclusive, unquote. I'm particularly concerned because this legislation has the potential of exposing personal information of customers that may be shared both with the government and between companies. The Obama administration writes that the bill, quote, lacks sufficient limitations on the sharing of personally identifiable information between private entities, unquote. I offered an amendment to simply require companies to make reasonable efforts to remove information unrelated to the cybersecurity threat, which can be used to identify specific persons. Even with this basic standard for compliance, the big private companies refused to make the effort, and my amendment was not made in order. Further, the bill allows the U.S. military to directly receive cyber information on Americans. By allowing companies to give information to the NSA or other military agencies, this bill threatens the long-held American tradition that the military does not snoop on U.S. soil against U.S. Americans, against U.S. citizens. So I also offered an amendment to require that information to be received only by civilian agencies. Thank you. Ensuring a layer of protection between citizens and the military. Unfortunately, my amendments, together with all other privacy amendments, will not be considered today. I urge my colleagues to join me in opposing this rule and the underlying bill. We can and we will have the opportunity to do better. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Colorado reserves. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I continue to reserve.